Introducing the award-winning Pod 4 Ultra from 8 Sleep, a high-tech mattress cover you can easily add to your existing mattress. The pod changes the temperature of your mattress. You can set it anywhere from 55 to 110 degrees, letting you and your partner set different temperatures on each side. I keep mine at 60 so that I don't get hot. It can also adjust the position of your mattress to reduce snoring, and you get 30 days to try and decide if you love it. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman to get $350 off your Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description. Welcome, everybody. We are just days away from the election, and the hijinks are in full swing. We now have widespread claims from Trump and people around him that there is already fraud taking place in Pennsylvania. We talked yesterday about how there's no actual evidence of this. We also now have a Supreme Court decision that is extraordinarily disturbing. The Associated Press reports Supreme Court's conservative justices leave in place Virginia's purge of voter registrations. Voter registration purge okayed. The article writes that the Supreme Court's conservative majority Wednesday left in place Virginia's purge of voter registrations that the state says is aimed at stopping people who are not U.S. citizens from voting. Remember that if you're not a U.S. citizen, you already can't register to vote, and you're not allowed to vote. One Virginian whose registration was canceled despite living in the state her entire life, called the purge, quote, a very bad October surprise. The High Court had the 3 liberal justices, of course, dissenting, but regardless, the majority granted an emergency appeal from Virginia's Republican administration, led, of course, by Glenn Youngkin. They provided no rationale for action, which is typical in these emergency appeals. The justices acted on Virginia's appeal after a federal judge found that the state was illegally purging people, in this case 1,600 specific voter registrations in the last 2 months. Federal appeals court previously allowed the judge's order to remain in effect, and now we have the Supreme Court saying, keep the purges going. Now, I don't want to come here to you today and say, sir or ma'am, the sky is falling. This is the end of the end of the end. First of all, taking a very pragmatic approach, Virginia is likely to go blue regardless of the voter purges that are going on. Virginia is unlikely to be the deciding state. It's not even considered a battleground. This is not per se about what is happening in Virginia and Virginia's outcomes. But if we are looking for any early signs of how might this Supreme Court involve itself in this election, if indeed we hear challenges from the Trump campaign that go through courts and are appealed, we are not given a lot of reason to be optimistic that this is a court that will not simply defer to Donald Trump. Now, we are, of course, trying to read into and predict how other sorts of challenges to this election might be handled by the Supreme Court. But when you look at the totality of the situation, you look at the fact that 3 of those justices were, after all, nominated by Donald Trump. I would love to believe, or to tell you that I believe, that the Supreme Court is a nonpartisan actor where 9 completely neutral and objective justices simply apply the law to facts. It's simply not the case. And we know this because of the groupings as often take place when decisions are made between the liberal justices and the conservative justices, who in most cases, end up aligning within their groups and opposite the counterparts. So we know that it's not as simple as these are just objective arbiters of the law as it applies to the facts. Now, the best insurance against all of this, and I'm saying this to you, 4 days before the election, 5 days, 4 full days, and plus some change before the election, it's always too late to say, well, we've got to figure this out. It's not that we've been ignoring it for the last 2 and 4 years. It's that they do a lot of this stuff at the very last second. The best insurance here, is a victory so overwhelming that a little bit of purging here or there doesn't make a difference. That's wishful thinking, I admit, because in an election that's expected to be this close, I don't want to say 1,600 voters could make a difference, but It's not impossible. You know, we saw 11,000 make a difference in Georgia. The second best insurance from after an overwhelming victory so big that they can't make a difference with these trimming around the edges. The second best insurance, of course, is hearing from Kamala Harris that they are prepared and that they are ready. And so that's what we have to hope for, certainly. All right, I have Nicky Jam updates. I love this story. I'm not going to understate it. I genuinely love this story. Let me remind you about what this relates to. Nicky Jam is a Latin musical artist who, to be honest, I kind of liked before he went fully in on Trumpism. And you might remember that not long ago, Nicky Jam went to a Trump rally, and Donald Trump, of course, having no idea who Nicky Jam is, thought Nicky was a woman and said that she's really hot. And then a guy with a teardrop, with a tear tattoo comes up on stage. So let me remind you of the last interaction between Trump and Nicky Jam. This is the best.
Latin music superstar, Nicky Jam. Do you know Nicky? She's hot. Where is Nicky?
Super hot.
Where is Nicky? Thank you, Nicky. Great to be having you here. Now you have
Now
to
up pops a guy.
Oh, look. Come here.
All right, so then Trump figures out Nicky Jam is indeed not a hot woman, but it's actually a guy with face tattoos. And Nicky Jam made a declaration that he is supporting Donald Trump. This led to absolute disaster to the point where Nicky had to disable comments on his Instagram because he was getting absolutely destroyed, not only by his fellow Puerto Ricans, but really by anyone who is capable of common sense. So then, over the weekend at Madison Square Garden, Tony Hinchcliffe says that Nicky Jam's native Puerto Rico is a floating pile of garbage in the ocean. And now Nicky is repealing or rescinding or revoking his endorsement of Trump. This is absolutely awesome. I'm going to play this for you. It's in Spanish. I'll translate as we go along, okay? It's not very long. It's worth hearing the full message.
Mi gente, normalmente yo no soy una persona de contestar este tipo de cosas en las cámaras.
So he says, you know, my friends, normally I'm not the type of person who's going to answer to this type of thing on camera.
Pues en mis redes sociales me refiero, una entrevista así.
I mean, in an interview format or on my social media networks like this.
La razón por la cual yo apoyé a Donald Trump era porque yo pensé que era lo mejor para la economía.
The reason I endorsed Trump is because I thought what was best for the economy.
En los Estados Unidos, donde viven muchos latinos,
in the U.S., where lots of Latinos live.
Muchos latinos, me incluyo.
Including myself in that.
Muchos inmigrantes que están sufriendo por la economía, y él siendo negociante pensé que era el mejor movimiento.
Many immigrants suffering because of the economy, and I thought that Trump was the best for that.
Nunca en mi vida pensé que un mes después iba a venir un comediante a criticar a mi país.
Never did I imagine that just 1 month later, a comedian would show up to criticize my country. Interesting to refer to Puerto Rico as a country.
Y hablar mal de mi país.
And to speak poorly of my country.
Por ende, renuncio a cualquier apoyo a Donald Trump.
And because of this, I rescind any support of Donald Trump.
Y me echo a los lados a cualquier situación política.
And I am stepping aside from any political situation. He's like, I'm out. We found the eject button. I am ejecting with my parachute, never to get involved in politics again.
Puerto Rico se respeta, Nicky Jam.
Puerto Rico should be respected, Nicky Jam. Okay, I mean, this is just awesome. This is awesome in every way. You go out there as Nicky Jam, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to get involved politically. This is going to be great. Trump thinks you're a hot woman. You go up on stage. He clearly has no clue who you are. He sees you as a political pawn the way he's like, oh, Hispanic artists are here to support me. Cool. Nicky, yeah, she sounds super hot. Up comes Nicky Jam with face tattoos. You go, oh, great, whatever. Nicky Jam gets crushed on social media by Puerto Ricans, Latinos, and just clear-thinking people alike. Turns off comments because he's getting brutalized so badly and is just waiting. How the hell how the hell can I get out of this? Mi gente, as he likes to say, mi gente, how do I get out of this? And then all of a sudden, Tony Hinchcliffe comes in and calls your home a floating pile of garbage. And now he's got the exit. And he goes, no more politics for me. I rescind my support of Trump. Have a nice life. You will never hear from me on politics again. It might have been better. It might have been better from the beginning to have thought through the endorsement a little bit. In all seriousness, I like Nicky. I forgive him. I think he stepped into something that he didn't even understand at all. But his views on the economy are completely wrong. And the idea that it's Trump who's going to bring back a better economy for immigrants, it's just not true. But Nicky has found a way out. He found the exit and he went directly for it. When all else fails, you call your opponents gay. That's what Tucker Carlson is doing. Now, I know that you might say, David, this must be from like the late 90s, right? Oh, you're gay. It's not. It's from October of 2024. Tucker Carlson, apparently out of ideas, out of substantive criticisms, now comes in and says, you know what? Tim Walz is obviously gay and he's hiding it. We've reached the point in the campaign, days before the election, where it's just, let's call our opponents gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, says Tucker.
Like Tim Walz is very obviously gay. I look at him and I'm like, well, you're gay. And I'm sure I'll be attacked for saying that. Maybe he's not gay, but he certainly seems gay.
Right. And immediately say, where's your evidence?
I love the interviewer going, right. He obviously seems gay.
I don't have any evidence. I'm just saying the guy looks super, super gay to me. But they're the ones always running on being like, it's great to be gay. Okay, if it's great to be gay, then why is it an attack on him for me to say that?
You know what's funny about this? I've never met a single person in my decades of activism and political involvement and just being a straight ally to the LGBT community. Never, ever, ever. Not once have I met anyone who said to me, we just think it's so great to be gay. It's great to be gay. More, and of course, what's implied in this is that they act like the left pushes. They go, no, the left wants more people to be gay. The left wants more people to be trans. I could not imagine a dumber comment. And he needs that in order to frame it as, if the left thinks it's so awesome to be gay, why would Tim Walz hide that he's gay? And of course, we just don't really care about people's sexual orientation, right? Like, my view is, I don't care who you're attracted to. It's not about, I think it's so awesome to be gay. Imagine like, I think it's so awesome to be straight. These are not terms that I use to evaluate this. It's, I think people should be who they want to be. I'm not going to discriminate against people. I don't think people should be discriminated against under the law, critically speaking. And let's move on to figuring out economics and healthcare and the environment and other things. But Tucker has to frame it as, if the left thinks it's so awesome to be gay, why wouldn't Tim just say he's gay?
Why would it be out of bounds to be like, hey, Tim Walz, you seem super gay. Are you gay? Have you ever slept with dudes? Like, if you ask that question, you'd be fired from your job.
You're just asking that now. It's very controversial, right?
But why would that be controversial? If there's nothing wrong with it, then why is it so offensive to ask that question?
Right.
And of course, this completely, it's such a perversion of the way that the sane left actually looks at this issue. And of course, the reason that we would say, why is it that you're asking that? It's not that it's, oh, I'm offended. It's not that it's offensive. It's that if you take a vice presidential candidate and you make the focus the idea that you believe he's hiding his sexual orientation, and you start saying, hey, have you slept with dudes? It's sort of like not really any of Tucker's business. That's fundamentally what the problem is here. And of course, Tucker loves to act as if it's the left that really has the problem on this issue, because they don't allow someone to just say, hey, you seem super gay. Are you gay? It's the fact that the right continues to be obsessed with this that is the issue. And I'm not big on saying, oh, I'm offended. This is offensive. It's not that it's offensive. It exposes what their beliefs are. And their beliefs, of course, happen to be completely disgusting. As a complete aside, I don't claim to have any gaydar whatsoever. But it never even occurred to me that Tim Walz might be gay. But Tucker says it's obvious. Maybe Tucker knows more, has a better gaydar than I do. I don't know. You know you've lost the argument when this is what you go to. And I'll tell you what this is really a reflection of. What they're trying to do is emasculate a guy who does not fit the picture of the emasculatable liberal. Tim Walz owns guns, hunts, coached football, repairs cars, likes fast food. Yeah, I'm sort of throwing that in satirically, but Tim Walz can't be written off as the French-speaking, Grey Poupon-eating John Kerry, like they did to John Kerry in 2004. So they're just straight up going, he seems super gay. And it's a reaction to the fact that he's really more of an alpha by their definition than their own guy, Donald Trump, is. That's what this is fundamentally about. Let's talk about a game changer in sleep technology, our sponsor 8 Sleep and their revolutionary Pod 4 Ultra. The Pod is a high-tech mattress cover, and you can easily add it to your existing mattress. You can cool or heat your mattress based on your preferences and even elevate your head if you snore. I run hot. I hate getting hot when I sleep. That's why I set my 8 Sleep Pod to keep my mattress at a cool 60 degrees at night. You can set it anywhere from 55 to 110 degrees. You can set each side of the bed independently to a different temperature depending on your preferences versus your partner's, or you can set your pod to detect your body's sleep cycles and automatically adjust temperature for optimal sleep. The pod can also detect when you're snoring and automatically adjust the position of the bed to reduce or even stop the snoring. This can be a huge factor in how rested you will feel the next day, and your sleeping partner will thank you bigly. You get 30 days to try it at home. Return it if you don't like it, but I know you'll love it as much as I do. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman. Use the code Pacman to get $350 off your Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description. If you stay on top of the news, you follow politics and elections, why not win cash for it? Manifold is the app and website where you can win cash for predicting what will happen next in politics, and it is free to play. Questions like, will Trump win the presidential election? Will Kamala Harris flip a state? Will political commentator Destiny appear on Joe Rogan's podcast? If you predict correctly, you win play money called Mana or Sweep Cash. One Sweep Cash is redeemable for a US dollar. So if you predict right, you can turn it into cash. And the platform gives you free Mana and Sweep Cash to play with every single day. Go to manifold.markets/Pacman and you'll get free extra Sweep Cash just for signing up to start you on your journey. No purchase necessary to win cash or prizes. If you want to go bigger, you can use my link to get 40 extra Sweep Cash when you spend $20 on Mana. If you put that 40 Sweep Cash on Trump losing the election at the current odds, you win 70 Sweep Cash if he loses, redeemable for $70 cash. You must be a U.S. resident, 18 or older. See terms and conditions. The link is in the description. Well, if not now, when? We are at the end, and progressive independent media needs to be as strong as humanly possible going into the next presidential term. Either we will have to be on guard defending against an authoritarian egomaniac with some of the worst political instincts we've ever seen, Donald Trump, or we will be in the position of wanting to push President Kamala Harris to do as much progressive change as possible. Either way, we need strong, progressive, independent media. I invite you to support this show or other progressive independent shows if you like them better. But if you like this one, I will gladly welcome your support if you sign up for a membership at joinpacman.com. We do an extra show every day for our paid members. You also get the daily show hours before everybody else, with no commercials, in audio or video format, whichever you prefer. I encourage you to sign up at joinpacman.com. Yesterday, we saw a publicity stunt gone wrong for Donald Trump as he visibly struggled to open the door to a garbage truck, almost fell down, and raised new questions about the dragging of his right leg and his motor function more broadly. So let me explain what went on here. Donald Trump, in response to all of the garbage talk, Tony Hinchcliffe saying Puerto Rico is a pile of garbage, Joe Biden seemingly misspeaking and being accused of saying Trump supporters are garbage. Yesterday was garbage day, and Donald Trump before his rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin, donned an orange high visibility vest that seems to be roughly the same color as his face was, and then attempted to get into a garbage truck. Now, I'm going to play this for you, and what you're going to notice is that 2 times Donald Trump slips and misses the handle of the truck, almost falls down, and then visibly struggles to get himself up onto the truck, really throwing his weight around. This was very much not good. And there are a couple, really sort of 3 reactions to this, and I don't even know where to start because it's so wacky. The first one is that you've got right-wing media like Hannity playing this on repeat, claiming it was awesome, seemingly without realizing that Trump visibly struggled to get in and almost face planted. So let's take a look at that.
Penn's treasure. And today in Wisconsin, take a look at that. This may go down as an iconic, epic moment.
Hannity calling it an iconic, epic moment, when what happened here is that Donald Trump couldn't even reach the handle and almost fell on the ground, and then somehow manages to maneuver himself into the truck. It's extraordinarily funny that they think that this looks awesome. Now, also hilarious, Donald Trump kept the orange vest on. The vest almost blends into his face because it's almost the same color. Trump kept the vest on during his rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which we will get to later, and Trump claiming that it was a surge of adrenaline that allowed him to propel himself onto that truck. Wow, that's a lot of work to step into a truck, isn't it? Adrenaline. He took caffeine pills is the next thing we're going to. I really dosed up on caffeine to get into the truck.
That doesn't look good. So I said, all right, look, let me take it off. And then I actually said, I climbed into the truck, but so I said, how the hell do you get into this truck? It's way up high. It's a big one. This was a beauty.
Sleepy Joe could never get into the truck.
I said, you didn't have to buy it that big, right? You have to get it that big? They brought this brand new, gorgeous truck, wonderful driver. He looked like Cary Grant in his prime. You know who that is? This beautiful driver. And he drove that big thing up. And I said, man, this is bad, because now I have all the cameras are all watching. Look at all the fake news. They were, most of them.
You never miss an opportunity to attack the media, of course.
No, most of them. Many of them were there, and I'm saying, oh, boy. One little mistake with these guys and your political career is over. You can't even...
Well, he did almost fall twice.
So I said, man, if I don't get up there, this is going to be very embarrassing. These stupid people, they'll say, he's cognitively and physically impaired.
And remember, this is Trump bringing it up before it even became a media story, because he recognizes it as a vulnerability. He knows he almost fell flat on his face twice.
And I can't do that when I'm alongside of this great athlete. I got to get up to that. So look, the first stair is like up here. I'm saying, shit. So I had the adrenaline going and I made it.
There you go. That is a lot of work and a lot of discussion. If anybody, imagine if Joe Biden spent 2 minutes at a rally talking about how he stepped into a vehicle. Okay. Just think about the asymmetrical reaction that there would be, and almost falling twice and needing adrenaline to step into a truck doesn't exactly project energy to me. Now, this raised a bigger issue, a bigger question, which is that we have a number of videos now where there are concerns about Trump's right leg dragging. And I'm going to play a couple of these for you here. And there are people who watch this who said, the reason this all happened is Trump's been dragging his right leg for a while. There seems to be, he swings it in a way that suggests less control over it. And without diagnosing anything, without going anywhere, others have suggested that can sometimes be a sign that there has been a stroke. And as you see Trump as he walks, the right leg moves in a completely different way. Trump dragging it, shifting it to the side. I'm not purporting to have an explanation for this, but what I can tell you is we've now seen it so many times as Trump walks, and we're playing examples of it. Just really something is up with that right leg, and he refuses to release his medical records, so we don't really know what it is. We just don't know what it is. Finally, from the truck, Donald Trump also insisting he still doesn't know anything about what happened with the comedian at Madison Square Garden. He just doesn't know.
I don't know anything about the comedian. I don't know who he is. I've never seen him. I heard he made a statement, but it was just a statement that he made. He's a comedian. What can I tell you? I know nothing about him. I don't know why he's there.
Doesn't know a thing about it. Still, he hasn't seen the clip. And then finally, if you want to see an emblematic representation of the Trump campaign, once Trump was in the garbage truck, they had him driven around in circles on an airport tarmac, which is really a great metaphor for the 2024 Republican Party. A garbage truck photo op chauffeuring Trump around in circles, accomplishing nothing and going nowhere. So that was the publicity stunt in Green Bay. Next, we go to the rally. After almost falling down twice and visibly struggling to get into a garbage truck, Donald Trump held a rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I have never seen Trump this orange. He's wearing an orange high visibility vest, and he actually looks more orange than the vest. We have not digitally altered this video in any way at all. And this was a terrifying rally, not just because of how Trump looked, but more importantly, because of what Trump said. I'd vote for a purple candidate if they took the right positions. I don't care what color. Trump can paint himself neon green, and I would vote for him if he had the right political positions, but he doesn't. And here is Trump saying he's going to protect the women of our country, whether they like it or not. And if you're Trump, I don't know that you really want to be insisting that you'll do things without women's consent. Probably not where I would be going.
And my people told me about 4 weeks ago, I was saying, no, I want to protect the people. I want to protect the women of our country. I want to protect the women. Sir, please don't say that. Why? They said, we think it's very inappropriate for you to say. I said, why? I'm president. I want to protect the women of our country. They said... They said, sir, I just think it's inappropriate for you to say, pay these guys a lot of money. Can you believe it? I said, well, I'm going to do it whether the women like it or not. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them from migrants coming in.
Whether the women like it or not is a phrase that Trump should ban from his vocabulary. It doesn't matter if the women want it. Trump will do it anyway. What a theme for this campaign. And it's wild how Trump is able to take pandering, because that when he says he'll protect women, it's just pandering. He's trying to do damage control based on everything that's happened with reproductive rights and abortion rights, etc. Trump is trying to pander, and it comes off sounding threatening. Trump will force non-consensual protection onto women. So a very scary rally. The Trump crowd, though, was completely dead at times. And here is the crowd going silent in Green Bay as Trump sort of mumbles and stumbles about the country being invaded.
We are being invaded. It's incredible. Think of it. We're being invaded by massive numbers. Very little difference between this invasion and the military. They don't wear a uniform. That's about the primary difference. Everyone will prosper. Every family will thrive. And every day will be filled with opportunity and hope. And loaded up with the good old.
So as you can hear, the crowd is completely silent. But if you want the crowd engaged at a Trump rally, what topic do you bring up? You all know what it is. It's trans people. For years now, the most titillating and activating and energizing topics at Trump rallies, Trump going after trans people. And indeed he did.
She loves transgender operations all over the place. Everybody should have one.
And now the crowd is suddenly alive. Oh, Kamala wants to give everybody an operation. Trump, in his infinite wisdom, suggesting that he knows more about how to design Navy warships than actual boat designers. I don't even know what they're called. Ship engineers. Here is Trump, and nobody knows more than Trump.
They're really like yachts. They're like beautiful yachts with a lot of guns on them. A lot of guns and weapons. And I'm a guy, I love beauty. Oh, I love beauty. So I took that ship and I designed the bow a little bit differently. I said, no, it's got to have more of a point. It was like, and they were great. And
yes, and as many of you know, because of Dr. John Trump, or whatever his uncle's name was, Trump has very good genetics for intelligence, and therefore he knows better than ship designers what a Navy warship should look like. Finally, Donald Trump, this time really getting into it, wearing a costume, and I call it a costume because for Trump, that's what it is, while wearing his orange high visibility vest, Trump doing the double jerk dance to cap a disastrous and abortive day in Wisconsin.
Young man, there's no need to feel down. I said, young man.
4 more days, folks, after which we will hopefully never be subjected to the atrocity that is Trump's YMCA double jerk dance ever again. We're all hoping, we're all praying. We will all hopefully be voting as well. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. It's great to welcome back to the program Harry Siegel, who is a clinical psychologist and senior lecturer in the psychology department at Cornell University. It's so great to have you on. And we were, chatting a little bit before we started here that we last spoke to you before President Biden decided to step aside and not continue his reelection campaign. Very much in retrospect, I feel that it was the right decision. A couple of different reasons why I feel that way, but I want to hear from you in terms of the way you look at these candidates and fitness and ability. Do you think it was a necessary thing for him to do? Do you think it was the right thing for him to do?
I think it was certainly the right thing to do politically because, when we last spoke, I was really following my colleague John Gartner's idea that Trump had a brain that was dementing, as he would put it, and Biden had a brain that was aging. And I think what we saw in that disastrous debate was Biden having a difficult time. And when people are in their 80s and they're working very, very hard, and it's at night, that he got lost a number of times, and it was confirming everyone's fear that he was too old. Now, I happen to think that afterwards, when he hosted NATO and he had that extraordinary press conference that went on for an hour, and at rallies, he was showing that he still had the mental fitness to do the work and to do the job. But I think he really lost the confidence of the public. He lost the confidence of the party. And I think that, what I was about to say is, I don't think he was ever a good candidate. I think he was an excellent president, but I don't think he was ever a good candidate. And David, I remember reading an article about him in 1988 in Esquire I first heard his story about the death of his wife and his two boys. And I remember thinking this could be a really interesting president. But remember that campaign didn't go well either. So I think for all those reasons, but both I think clearly he has periods, perhaps during the day, where he's not able to function as well. A friend of mine who's a clinician has a patient who's 86, who was a former professor at Cornell. And what this man tells my friend is that at 86, he has about 4 good hours a day where he can really focus. And otherwise, he's kind of puttering around. And maybe we saw that kind of decline with Biden. But I don't think that his decline at all resembles what we were seeing with Trump.
So let's talk about that. We now have 60-year-old Kamala Harris and we have 78-year-old Donald Trump. It is my view that not enough attention has been paid for a long time to what Donald Trump is experiencing, whatever it is. And I say that as a layperson and not an expert. I recently reviewed video of Donald Trump in 2016, 2020, and 2024. And although I don't necessarily have the clinical vocabulary to describe everything I'm observing something extraordinarily notable here. So as you now, what are the most precise terms with which you can describe what you're now observing in Trump?
Well, there's a number of things that are noticeable, and I'm so glad you went back and looked at those, because not only does he look different in 2024, but I would argue he looks different than he looked in July.
Yes.
I'm seeing some real decline, and unfortunately, with these kinds of disease processes, they often speed up. But before I even comment on those, let me just state at the outset that his bravado, his confidence, his ability to connect to his audience and to feed off of the adulation is still very much intact.
Yes.
And if he's interviewed by a very friendly room, the Fox and Friends Saturday team, for example, who interviewed him last June and believed all of the myths about Trump, he can come across fairly coherent. He still wanders, but if he's comfortable and it's during the day and there's adoring people, that bravado and that confidence persists.
Yes.
What has been slipping, however, is when he is pressed to answer complicated questions, he cannot answer them.
Right.
He will digress, he will stonewall, he will tread water, but he's really avoiding anyone asking him difficult questions, as we saw at the Detroit Economic Club, and we also saw at the New York Club. So specifically what I'm seeing is this. First of all, there's an increase in the phonemic paraphasias. That is his inability to finish certain words when he begins them. And like many people who struggle with early signs of dementia, he will try to cover it up by rushing to another word.
Yes.
So I've seen that increasing. What we're also seeing, I think, is a kind of simplifying of his sentences. So he gums together these ideas and says them. And some of them we notice, like the Hannibal Lecter thing. And then when he hears the criticisms, he says that they're part of his genius.
So let's talk about that a little. Before we I want to talk about that because this is a bigger topic, and I mentioned this to you also before we started. One of the things I'm noticing is that Donald Trump is clearly aware of what's being said about his cognition, and he started to develop some tools to react to that. One of the tools is that he regularly says Kamala Harris needs a cognitive test, something's wrong with her brain, she's low IQ, etc. Anybody who honestly evaluates her knows that this is very much not the case. It's so obvious that this isn't the case, but it's interesting that as the focus has shifted to Trump's brain, he starts talking about Kamala Harris. The other thing I've noticed is the so-called weave. And I think this is what you're pointing to, which is recognizing that he often doesn't answer the question or can't or doesn't want to or ends up on tangential topics. He has couched this as he has an incredible linguistic and communication ability to weave together seemingly unrelated topics and always come back to the original question. Once again, anyone who looks at his speeches knows that that's not what's happening, but talk about that. It is in a sense a protective shield that he has created.
Yes, he rationalizes his deficits by proclaiming either the other person has those deficits, not he, and also he will also attribute it to brilliance.
Yes.
So I remember I think it was in June that he first started talking about how brilliant he was with the we. And he was running three stories together. It was actually about Macron saying that he would put a tariff on things and Trump threatening, one of those Sir stories.
Yes.
And he kept returning to it, but not finishing it. So then he was aware of that and said, I'm just being brilliant. That weave is becoming more and more disorganized. So now when it's happening, he actually never gets back to where he was. And it's very disturbing to see. And as far as his projecting onto Kamala Harris his own deficits, there's something that John Heilman said that I always remember, which is everything Trump says is confession or projection.
Right.
And this is an example of it. And I guess I want to say one more thing, which is not only does Trump suffer from a very severe personality disorder, malignant narcissism with sociopathic features, he's also, of course, having this cognitive decline. I think Kamala Harris has shown herself to be psychologically very healthy.
How can you notice that from what you see on TV or videos?
Well, it's kind of fascinating. I don't know if you watched the town hall with Anderson Cooper.
Yes.
But Cooper was pushing her on a couple things. First of all, I heard you called your minister when you heard from President Biden that he was dropping out. Can you tell us about that call? And when Harris is asked to talk about something personal, you see her wait a little bit. And then she tells it, and her face kind of lights up, and there's both a vulnerability and a pleasure in speaking about it. And she did that in talking about her faith and about her church. And then when a woman asked her a question, and Cooper said that this woman's husband had died a year earlier, Cooper went back and said to her, "What about your grieving? I know you lost your mother some time ago." And Harris began to talk about grief in a very personal way. That when you're grieving someone, you're always aware of the lack of their being gone, but there's an effort to remember them in the way that they wish to be remembered. And then she went on to say that it's very important for us to allow people to grieve in the way they're going to grieve. And it was so serious and it was so honest. And that ability to talk about difficult things, personal feelings, to be able to talk about it honestly and fluidly is one sign of psychological health.
The other thing that's there that might be relevant is Trump struggles to talk about abstract concepts and ideas is one thing I notice, where with Trump, it's, I said this to Mexico, and then, I showed Abdul a picture of his house, and it's a sequential linear narrative about facts. Whereas what you're talking about with Kamala Harris is the idea to talk about a concept in a way that is not relevant to a sequential story. Trump seems to suffer from sort of like concrete thinking is where he hits a limit. Is there some, I don't know if I'm expressing this articulately.
No,
but
David, that's so insightful because you're right that when there's cognitive decline, there's the loss of the capacity to think abstractly. And Trump he uses formulas now. There's this Sir Story formula. Someone tells him he's going to do something costs too much. Trump threatens the person, like Abdul in the house, and the person backs off.
Yeah.
And then Trump has made himself into the hero in his story. I don't, if you watched Harris's speech at the Ellipse the other night.
Yes.
There's this very beautiful part at the end that I don't think commentators talked about, which she said, I forget the exact expression, but she says, I am living the promise of America. I see the promise of America in all of you. Now that's a poetic, abstract idea that she was able to bring in to create a kind of crescendo at the end of her speech. And yes, it's written and it's on the teleprompter, but she works on her speeches. She's not just reading things. And
last thing, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to affirm what you said, how different that is.
It's notably different. And this sort of gets me to the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is the linguistic versus the cognitive. We reported earlier this week on a study that looked at non-teleprompter speaking, right? Because as you point out, the teleprompt, you're reading something, it's not necessarily reflective of vocabulary or spontaneous thought. But it evaluated Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris in debate speech over periods of time. And what it found was that Kamala Harris's, it looked at 7 different factors, including vocabulary, sentence structure, complexity, all these different things. Kamala Harris essentially unchanged. Joe Biden, yes, some decline, and Donald Trump, notably more decline, linguistically. Yes. Here's my question to you.
Oh, yes.
Is it plausible that one might have linguistic decline that does not correlate with cognitive decline, or are in most cases the two related? And I know my audience wrote to me and said, David, there are examples where specific injuries or conditions can affect speech but not cognition, but they're rare. Usually these things go hand in hand. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. Linguistic performance and behavior is key to looking at cognitive health. In fact, if you look at the IQ, right, the higher the IQ, the greater the person's capacity to think abstractly. So if you have, unfortunately, a low IQ, then you might be only able to think concretely. Like, this is this is this, this is good, this is bad. And what you're seeing with Trump off teleprompter, that's exactly right. He still has the bravado and the energy. In fact, he has more energy when he goes off the teleprompter, but his language gets much more simple. And that's what really disturbs me. Last time I was on, you asked me, would I be saying this about a Democrat? Even though I do think Trump is a terrible danger to the world and to our democracy. But if Kamala Harris were showing these signs, I'd be saying the same thing.
We have been speaking here with Harry Siegel, clinical psychologist, senior lecturer in the psychology department at Cornell University. Really appreciate your insights today and over the last period of time, and we will all be watching next week.
We will. Thanks so much for having me, David.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. In the final stretch of her campaign, Vice President Kamala Harris has been focusing on a few different themes and sort of couching this election a little bit differently depending on the audience and the speech that she's giving. And those themes have been the positive vision rather than the apocalyptic vision from Trump. The idea that she would be president for everybody, even if you don't vote for her, versus Trump saying he might deploy the military against Kamala Harris supporters. But number three, and very interestingly, she is also on Trump is unstable, Trump is unfit. I would gladly challenge him to a cognitive test. And I think that this is smart, not as the primary topic of your campaign, but as a, by the way, he's deteriorating and I'm not sort of thing. And yesterday in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which, by the way, we did a poll of our audience, the results of which we will have on the show, and asked in which state should she be focusing. The vast majority of my audience said she should be focusing on Pennsylvania. I think it makes sense mathematically. Pennsylvania, as an individual state, one of the most likely to decide who gets to 270 electoral votes. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania yesterday, Kamala Harris saying Trump is unstable, he's obsessed with revenge, making the case that he simply has no business going anywhere near the Oval Office again.
Donald Trump is, right? So this is someone who is not thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable.
Yes.
Obsessed with revenge.
True.
Consumed with grievance. And out for unchecked power. And look, in less than 90 days, either he or I will be in the Oval Office.
Right. These rallies, by the way, the energy at these rallies is wild, and it's palpably different than what you see at a Trump rally. At a Trump rally, the crowd gets most sort of energized, as we said earlier, when Trump says something about trans people. At a Harris rally, the crowd gets most energized at the possibility of participating in our democratic system in order to preserve democracy and make Kamala Harris the next president. It is a palpably different energy, and we will see whether that translates into a victory. Kamala Harris also, at this very same event in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania yesterday, says that it is together that we are going to achieve what we want to achieve. A very different message than what you've been hearing from Trump.
And we know we have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is, but Pennsylvania, that is not who we are. And I know plenty of folks are just exhausted with it all and know that it is time to stop pointing fingers and to start locking arms. It is time. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
The focus on Pennsylvania makes a lot of sense. If you said to me today, David, who do you think wins Pennsylvania? I have no idea. The polling is a coin flip. If you want to tell yourself that Trump's got it, you can find evidence that that's the case by looking at voter registration data. On the other hand, if you want to find evidence that Kamala Harris has got Pennsylvania in the bag, you can do that as well by looking at early voter data. I think the dynamics of this election are so different than 2020, and the polling is so close. Anybody who's telling you they have certainty on Pennsylvania is just doing it for the clicks. I don't think it's possible to know, but what I can tell you is if you're phone banking, if you're door knocking, there is probably no better place to do it than Pennsylvania in these final 4.5 days until the election. It's not George W. Bush, but it is Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has decided that despite being a Republican, he is indeed going to endorse Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris. Arnold Schwarzenegger laying this out in a Twitter post. I am going to give you sort of an abridged version here, but I encourage you to read the whole thing. Arnold Schwarzenegger explaining his decision by saying, I don't really do endorsements. I'm not shy about sharing my views, but I hate politics and don't trust most politicians. I also understand that people want to hear from me because I am not just a celebrity. I'm a former Republican governor. Skipping ahead, Arnold says, let me be honest with you. I don't like either party right now. My Republicans have forgotten the beauty of the free market, driven up deficits, and rejected election results. Democrats aren't any better at dealing with deficits, and I worry about their local policies hurting our cities with increased crime. Now, that's not going on, but okay. He's getting to the right point, eventually saying, I want to tune out, but I can't, because rejecting the results of an election is as un-American as it gets. Continuing by saying, I will always be an American before I am a Republican. That's why this week I am voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Continuing that he's sharing it with all of us because, quote, I think there are a lot of you who feel like I do. You don't recognize your country, and you are right to be furious. Finalizing this by saying a candidate who won't respect your vote unless it is for him, a candidate who will send his followers to storm the Capitol while he watches with a Diet Coke, a candidate who has shown no ability to work to pass any policy besides a tax cut that helped his donors and other rich people like me, but helped no one else. A candidate who thinks Americans who disagree with him are the bigger enemies than China, Russia, or North Korea. That won't solve our problems. It will just be 4 more years of bullshit with no results that makes us angrier and angrier, more divided and more hateful. We need to close the door, says Arnold, on this chapter of American history, and I know that former President Trump won't do that. He will divide, he will insult, he will find new ways to be more un-American than he already has been, and we the people will get nothing but more anger. Wrapping up by saying, vote this week, turn the page, and put this junk behind us, and even if you disagree with me, vote, because that's what we do as Americans. And Arnold linking to vote.org. Great website where you can confirm whether you're registered, find out where to vote, etc. This is a great message from Arnold. Even if he's wrong about liberal cities having policies that drive up crime, it's not happening. It's not in the data. I wish Arnold hadn't stooped to that. But good for Arnold saying to other Republicans who might feel the way he does, it's okay. It's okay to do this. Vote the way I'm voting. It's for the country, and that's what matters the most, not this Republican Party that's been completely perverted by MAGA Trumpism. The question that remains is, where's George W. Bush? One of George W. Bush's daughters coming out and saying, I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I would like to see George W. Bush put country over party and do the same thing. He's got just a few days left to do it. One of the biggest gaslights that the modern Republican Party does is accuse Democrats and the left of doing what they actually do. We call it projection. And here is another example. Matt Schlapp went on, I guess this is Newsmax yesterday, and he pretended that it is Kamala Harris that is going to do exactly what Trump did in 2020 and exactly what Donald Trump is planning to do this time around, to delay the election and delay certification of the election results. Here's Matt Schlapp. And just remember, Matt Schlapp himself participated in doing this in Nevada in 2020. He does this, and he's saying, oh, Kamala's going to do this.
Yeah, so, she's in her home field advantage. She's a creature of the swamp. She says she hasn't spent very much time in D.C. because she spent actually a lot of time in Canada growing up. Her bio is very interesting, and she doesn't get too much scrutiny on that. And so she has this crowd yesterday, and they're saying 75,000 people. I live here. That was not 75,000 people, and the people who were there run your government. You should all know that. They just opened up the front doors, and all the federal governments were given liberal leave because they can do whatever they want, and they left the buildings, and all the liberal NGOs left the buildings, and they occupied this space where she...
By the way, this is a delusional story.
called all of us basically what Biden called us: garbage, insurrectionists, election deniers, people with grievances. And if she wants to be our president, she should treat us with some respect. And let me tell you, she's the sitting vice president. And on Newsmax, I want to give Kamala Harris a challenge. You sat
How about pronouncing her name correctly to start with?
there and attacked Donald Trump for what happened on J6 because many of us saw election fraud and see illegal voting happening today. If you're the sitting vice president, her job is going to be to certify Donald Trump's win. She needs to address the American people. As the sitting vice president,
She needs to tell us she won't do what Mike Pence should have done.
is she going to work with the Democrats to delay Donald Trump's victory? Is she going to work to decertify and to do all the things Hillary Clinton did in 2016?
It's sort of like she should tell us if she plans to do it, because we sure as hell plan to do it.
That they accused Donald Trump of doing in 2020. They're the engineers of all this election denying. And I challenge Kamala Harris, if you want to be a different kind of Democrat, tell us, if you lose this race, you'll give up on election night and you'll certify Donald Trump's win.
Matt Schlapp is demanding that Kamala Harris commit not to stooping to what Matt Schlapp encouraged Trump to do back in 2020. And there's an article widely available from 2020. Nevada GOP and Trump officials allege voting fraud in Nevada. And if you read the article, you will actually find that Matt Schlapp is mentioned here. There are hundreds of dead people who voted in Clark County, said Matt Schlapp, the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Schlapp did not have any evidence to support that claim. Schlapp also said teenagers were voting, but had no evidence for that either. And then, of course, used all of that to justify trying to delay the election results. They know that this is something that one could do because they did it in 2020 and they're planning to do it in 2024. What can we do? Overwhelm the vote, number one. Number two, hope that Kamala Harris knows what she's talking about when she says, we are ready for that. We are ready for that. We will soon find out. We have such a great bonus show for you today.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money.
Right.
Everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
Today on the bonus show, we will make money by talking about Elon Musk's Get Out the Vote effort, which now includes tricking and threatening the workers. How does this stuff keep happening? New polls have Kamala Harris significantly ahead in two critical swing states we will discuss. And finally, much has been made of the betting markets, people betting on Trump versus Harris. But what is it really worth? And what is this costing us that these betting markets exist? Peter Thiel is involved with one. All of it and more on today's bonus show. Don't miss it. Sign up at joinpacman.com. And remember to pre-order my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine. You can get it in physical book form, ebook or audiobook. I'm in the process of recording the audiobook. It is slow going, but we are doing it. Make sure to get those pre-orders in, and then to get the free extras with the book, go to davidpakman.com/free book stuff. See you on the bonus show. See you back here tomorrow. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. Introducing the award-winning Pod 4 Ultra from 8 Sleep, a high-tech mattress cover you can easily add to your existing mattress. The Pod changes the temperature of your mattress. You can set it anywhere from 55 to 110 degrees, letting you and your partner set different temperatures on each side. I keep mine at 60 so that I don't get hot. It can also adjust the position of your mattress to reduce snoring, and you get 30 days to try and decide if you love it. Go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman to get $350 off your Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description.